Hey everyone, and welcome to our weekly SIG release meeting. This is the EU time slot or Pacific, the APAC time slot probably. This meeting adheres to the CNCF Code of Conduct, which basically boils down to be excellent to each other as always. I will link the agenda in the chat, and thanks to Ray for taking notes for today. So we have a bunch of folks. Do we have anyone on the call who would like to introduce themselves and give a hello? Because if not, then we can jump over to our sub-project updates. Release engineering. Is anyone here from release engineering who would provide us an update on the latest stuff is going on?
I guess I can. So there are. I've been out, so I may not be aware of everything going on, but I have two topics I would like to talk about. The first one is we are in the process of moving the SASA tester to finish our attestations in the release process. The repository is being donated from a private repo to the Kubernetes organization. I've been in contact with SIG, and it should be happening pretty soon. Maybe it's already done. I don't know. It's pretty early here. And the second one, which also segues a little bit to the next topic, is the state of the promotion process. As you may have seen from the previous releases that we got, the image promotion currently is running very, very slow. This is because we are now promoting to a ton of artifact registry regions. And before we used to, when we did the promotion process, which means that staged images moved from the staging registries after community authorization to release, they moved to the production registries. We used to copy them to 3 locations, and now it's, I think, over 20, if I'm not mistaken. And so this made the promotion process very slow. It will require significant redesign and rethinking of the whole process. Everybody, I think right now, is applying their best to come up with new solutions. And there are some nice discussions going on in Slack and issues and other places. So just, well, first of all, I would like to thank the release managers who have taken over those releases, who have been taking over, well, more than a day to complete. And the second one is, well, just let everybody know that we are trying to come up with some answers to, well, maybe remediate the situation a little bit at the moment, but then also trying to rethink how promotion looks like for the following months and maybe years.
Do we already have a tracking issue for that?
Not really. Currently, it's spread in. There's a PR going on Kubernetes SIG promo tools, trying to speed up the process in authorization, and mostly Ben is working, trying to look at how to adjust the promoter to run more efficiently in making better use of the hardware infrastructure that supports it, but not overall. There's no, because we don't have like a working plan yet, but we can create one. Oh, Arno just shared one here.
Yeah, for example, it also affects the pre-submits, right? So for example, it would be great if we could do something like a diff for the pre-submits. So what has changed, and then check the everything which should be checked in the pre-submit and not for every image in the repository. And I would also assume that that we can somehow identify possible fields for parallelism or something like this.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mohammed and Arno, for sharing all the issues on the chat. Yeah, so one idea, for example, that Ben came up with is maybe not looking at what the registries look like, but instead relying on the state we know from Git. So since we control all of the changes in manifests, through Git and PRs, we can try to, well, assume that everything is complete up to that point. Just promote without looking at every single image in the image, which wasn't a very scalable approach anyway from the beginning. And instead have just assuming that the manifest will promote to the next ideal state and then rely on other running processes to check consistency of the registries.
All right. Do you think it would make sense to present something like this next week, or do you think we are already at a point next week where all those issues are resolved?
Well, in fact, I will be presenting at the contributor summit with Arno and Ben, just like a quick, mostly informal kind of talk about the changes to the registry. And the idea of this is, well, it's twofold. One, let the community know why the changes happen and what they look like. And maybe it can open the forum for a nice discussion around new ideas around this topic.
Yeah, cool. Sounds great.
And well, I guess this is it from me. I mean, Mohammed and Arno here, who have been working fearlessly on all of this process. So if they have anything to add, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, so I got a few things to add to that, right? So yeah, it was a long project. I don't know, 4 months in now, we finally got there. Nobody expected the promotion to drag on that slowly, but we kind of do need to rethink some of our assumptions. One quick and easy dirty fix right now is to get the pre-submits sped up by basically looking at the diff of head and the branch. Basically, look at the resulting diff in the YAML and just check that, right? Instead of checking the entire thing. There were some other ideas going around, but I haven't seen anything in writing or in an issue that's ready to go just yet. And if it helps anybody, we only promote to 20 out of the 35 regions that are available. So if we do turn those 15 on, I think that's going to drag on to another 2-3 hours. We don't need to do that just yet, but it's something we kind of need to do sometime next year. So it'd be nice to sort this out as soon as possible.
And also, Mohammed, I don't know if you're more up to date of the status of the project, because there's also the plan to mirror some of those images in AWS, or is that still going, or how does it look like?
That's automated now, actually. So
okay,
we mirror from the GCS bucket that backs GCR. There's another long conversation that we need to have about that idea itself, because that might go away sometime in the future. But as of today, that's what we do. So there's a bucket from Google Cloud that we copy to S3, and then we use some AWS services to copy it to the other 10 or so buckets that we've got. Those buckets themselves kind of need to be, we need to add more regions in AWS as well. That's another item that's not tracked that we probably want to look at as well. But that doesn't affect the main promotion story.
Yeah, I know it's going on async from the actual promotion. But yeah, I mean, that is the absolute big one. And well, I hope that we can get some work going on in the really near future to remediate to some of this.
Cool, thank you. Any further thoughts regarding release engineering or release engineering topics? Because if not, then we can jump over to the release team section. Do we have anyone from the release team who would provide us an update? No, it does not look like this. So we skip this over to the next meeting, which is not a big deal at all. And we can jump over to the open discussion section. So yeah, so the first topic is a short one. So I sent out a mail earlier today that we moved our SIG release meeting from Monday to Tuesday next week. The main reason for that is that we assume that folks still travel on Monday, and Monday morning is probably not the best time slot for everyone. And Tuesday is still free, and the Contributor Summit somehow reduced their schedule from Monday, Tuesday to just Monday. So we have the full Tuesday for meetings and get-togethers like that. Yeah, so it's now on Tuesday, 10 a.m. local time. I updated the schedule. I also added the location on top of the agenda. So if you have anything we would like to discuss in particular at this point in time, then feel free to add it to the agenda. And we have 2 hours, which is quite some big time slot for us. Yeah, Jeremy, you have the edition for the social event on Wednesday. Do we have any further details on that?
There's 2 venues that kind of were high on the list. One is a rooftop thing that's really close to the venue. And the other was a place that has a lot of outdoor seating that's also fairly close. So I'm going to try to call today and secure both of them, see which one I can get. Yesterday, both were closed. Weird, closed on Mondays, but closed on Mondays. So I'm going to try to block off some time. We had 10 folks respond to the survey, so I'll shoot for like that number. If anybody else is interested in coming and hasn't indicated so, just ping me and let me know, so I just have a rough idea how many folks.
Cool, thanks. Any further comments regarding Contributor Summit or our evening get-together? Because if not, then I'm happy that Marco would like to provide us an update about the DApp and RPM signing and the progress on the open build service proof of concept.
Hey everyone, so here's the situation. I have spent a lot of time since our last meeting to try and see how open build service works and if this is something that we can use in our pipeline. And for the beginning, I would like to thank a lot of folks from OpenSUSE and Open Build Service who helped me to get started, to learn more about how everything works and how we can use it. The situation is, what is the most important is that some initial phase is successful. I was able to build depths and RPMs for IMD64 for all packages that we already published, like CryTools, Kubernetes CNI, Kubelet, kubeadm, kubectl. I used 2 projects for that. The first one is ICV Kubernetes, and the second one is my home project. I think that ICV Kubernetes is probably most complete, but I think it only has Debian packages for now, and only Kubelet actually is both Debian and RPM. So you can take a look at how it looks like and what we can expect from those packages. I think it is fairly, from standpoints of how it is organized, I think it is fairly okay. From what is described in the CAP, I think that it is okay. For example, we have per distro, we can create multiple sub-projects and that stuff, and better create those channels like nightly, daily, whatever we want to have for pre-releases, stable releases. I think that is not going to be a problem. And actually, I tried to install those packages and that was successful. I even tried migrating existing cluster, like creating a cluster you install it with Google's packages, and then upgrading to OBS and upgrading a cluster that works as expected. There was no issues. Everything went really well. So this is also another good thing. And the migration process was pretty simple. Like I just had to remove the old repo and the GPG key, then add the new repo and GPG key again, and then just run update, try to upgrade packages, and like it worked out of the box. There was no additional steps that I actually had to take. So this is from the good side. Also to say from good side is that the build times were okay. Initial experience is that they were variable because when I was building in my home project, some stuff was very slow. I had to wait many hours, but it turns out that ICV Kubernetes is a bit higher priority. And after that, I didn't really see problems. Everything was finishing in a matter of minutes. Like, let's say then 10 to 15 minutes to get packages was something that I observed. I think this is not too bad. And I think that even if we also add multi-architectures like ARM and other stuff we have, I think they're running in parallel, so it's not going to be a problem. And I think like building packages shouldn't take like more than half an hour or something like that. But this is something that we are still going to see. How is this going to work? Also, something that is different and what is something to pay attention to is that spec files had to be changed a little bit. For RPM, we were able to use the existing one more or less without significant changes. I had to change some, let's say, smaller details, but everything else was pretty much the same. For Debian, it actually required some significant changes. I had to change the structure a little bit. And also in our Debian packages, the situation is that when we build packages, we run curl to download the binary and then use that binary, put it in the package and complete everything. But this doesn't seem possible with OBS because Debian builders are not really connected to the internet. So we can't use curl to download packages. We had to fetch those packages, put them in the binary, and then push them to OBS. So this is basically how it is going to work. I'm still going to see with folks if this is maybe one possibility, like to have the internet access, but I wouldn't count that much of that. So even the way that we have like that we would fetch and push is going to work pretty much okay, I think. There is a problem. I left a note here about the layout of the repositories and packages because right now, so what is the key issue here? For Debian packages, we have a package for each of our packages that we publish. We have dedicated kubelet, kubectl, kubeadm, and so on. For RPM, we have everything in the same spec file. So it defines all packages, and in OBS, there is only one package created. Like you just create a kubelet package, and it is going to build everything there, like both kubectl, kubeadm, and everything. There was some, let's say, as a requirement in Slack channel that we keep this one RPM file and build everything with one spec file, but I'm not sure how much I like that. I am a little bit more fan of having multiple RPM spec files, like for each package, one spec file, because it makes stuff much easier to maintain, or at least in my experience, but this is something that we have to discuss. So this is one of the action items, discuss how we want to, let's say, template our spec files. And now to the not so good part is that we are still not clear how are we going to have the multi-arc builds. The problem there is that we will probably have to create a tarball with all binaries for all architectures and then push that to OBS. And that can be quite large. And there is some concerns how well is that going to work. What is usually that is happening is that folks publish sources, like we will have to publish Kubernetes sources and then build binaries that we need for architecture needed. But I also have doubts about that approach because the first one is that Kubernetes is pretty huge. I think without Git history, it is more than 1 gigabyte, which is quite a lot. And other thing is that we are going to have a little bit of problem with reproducibility because we might end up in a situation that binaries generated by OBS is not the binaries that we ship in cloud buckets and other stuff, and that might confuse some users. And other stuff that we are going to have problem when we are starting this is with signing, especially because, for example, going with cosign, I think that we wouldn't be able to use keyless in OBS because keyless requires GitHub or Google Cloud Run or something like that. So this is some problem that we are going to have, and I don't think that using sources is actually going to work. But it would be nice to get on another call with OBS folks to discuss how are we going to do this. And another problem that has been recorded in the CAP by Ben and by some other folks is that that we should build packages ourselves and then provide them to Google and provide them to OBS, and that's not going to work. For OBS, you can only provide sources. You can provide like created packages. And those packages that are created by OBS are already signed. And it's mostly like that Google can't take signed packages and publish them because their systems are not really made for that. And it's mostly like that they can't even resign them. And like, it's also that we can't remove signature or something like that. So this is not going to work. And this is some open topic that we have to discuss with Ben and with Google folks, how are we going to handle. But in general, this has been a little bit longer, maybe. But in general, I think that I am pretty happy how it went. Like from the building side and from everything, it worked. Now the question is to again meet with OBS folks to discuss the next steps, to discuss those problems, and to see if we are going to be able to use their infra, like OpenSUSE infra, so that we don't have to run our own OBS. If we would have to run our own OBS, I have some concerns about that because this is another component that we don't really have experience with, and that there has a lot of moving parts that we need to take care of. So if we can run it on OpenSUSE infra, that's going to be, I think, okay approach. If not, I guess then some discussions will be needed. I guess I hope I didn't disconnect or something like that.
Yeah, thank you for this great overview. Jason, you have a hands up.
Yeah, I was just going to say the OpenSUSE folks already said that they would be willing to host these on the OBS infrastructure. So we can go ahead with that assumption in place. And then if we wanted to migrate to our own OBS instance at some point in the future, we would have the flexibility to, and we could migrate that information over relatively easily. The other thing I would recommend is that we can put basically a proxy in place so that we have the naming that we want underneath the Kubernetes DNS, and then we can proxy the OBS hosted images through that proxy. That way, if in the future we need to change where we're hosting the images again, whether it's moving to our own hosted infrastructure or moving to a self-hosted OBS, we don't have users having to change URLs again. We can keep that all behind our proxy.
Okay, yes, I agree with that. I think it is a good point. I think we should definitely have something like that, some proxy. I think we have something similar for Google, like there is apt-kubernetes.io and yum.kubernetes.io or something like that. So I think it should also work for the OpenSUSE infra. I don't see that as a problem. And yeah, I think that as of the next steps is probably to get the multi-arc stuff working. I'm going to look into that. Sasha commented on chat that there is service and download files for getting the files. This is something that I am going to try. I have already asked OpenSUSE folks about that, and they told me about this, but I didn't really have time to try that as well.
Yeah, this is something we can play around with, right? So they have this service infrastructure which allows internet access. For example, if we imagine for downloading Go modules and things like that, we don't have to vendor everything into the repository. So we can use access to the internet by using those services.
Yeah. One of the, did you want to say something or?
Yeah, Go ahead.
Go for it, Sasha.
Yeah, I just have a question. So what is your overall impression on the integration of the into CRED into our current process, how do you think fits OBS in there?
I think this is going to be something that we still have to see, because the OBS client is in Python, so we can't really do that natively. We would probably have to create our own API layer that we use. They provide the API, and there is some documentation. I started looking into that. I don't think that we need too much. We probably just need to do stuff like push files and that, but I think this is doable. It requires some work, but I guess it is possible.
So I was going to say, with regards to services, let's try to, I think one of the values of doing this in OBS and having the visibility of the spec files per version is that people can, you know, if they want, build themselves, right? So I would continue to try as much as possible to keep on that offline path, assuming that their build environments are going to be air gapped. And you know, for the tool, I think there was a recent conversation in a PR that was basically, you know, hey, we shell out to so many other things in general. I think that this is effectively going to be a trigger somewhere. Maybe it is, you know, maybe it's a separate, you know, maybe it's a separate GCP job that we run, or it's something that's triggered as a result. It's another step within the GCP process, but I think packaging, you know, their tool, if there's already a, you know, a container image for it, packaging, or if not, you know, packaging their tool, triggering the jobs and reading the output from there should be sufficient. We don't necessarily have to integrate into Krell, especially if there is not already a Go API for this. I don't think that we need to get into the business of doing the Go API for OBS just to satisfy this. So I think, you know, this is, Marco, this is phenomenal progress. Thank you to Marco and to Jason and all of the folks that have been working on getting this going. I guess the question for me is do you need anything from us, from the leadership side?
So more of something that I'm going to need some help from SIG release as well is to decide on how are we going to handle our spec files, both from RPMs and Debians. For example, do we want to have one huge RPM spec, or do we want to have multiple RPM specs for each package? How do we want to handle Debian packages? There is some idea that you can use RPM specs for building both RPMs and Debian packages. And someone on release packages POC channel shared that tool. Actually, I think that Podman is using that, but I am not really a huge fan of that, because I would like that we have Debian sources so Debian users can natively build packages for them. What Stephen said, that we should give that possibility to users. And there is stuff such as like that we need to decide, that I don't really want to decide on my own. So yeah, this is something that I am going to need help with.
Yeah, so my quick thoughts there would be, you know, and echoing what Jason said in the chat, it is simpler if the concerns are separated. You know, the spec or, you know, Debian config per package, and I think, you know, for the RPM side, we have been surviving with this omnibus package, but it really should be a separate spec per package.
Yeah. So yeah, this is what I will do. I just wanted to make sure that everyone is okay with that. Like, this is also my thoughts. So yeah, but as I said, I didn't try to make any decision on my own.
The thing to think about is, whenever you're changing an interface like this, like how is this going to change the way a user consumes our packages, right? So as we're kind of walking down this path, are we making sure that we're doing like reviewing the installation docs on the website?
Yeah.
Right. Because those are those are effectively people's expectations of how to install Kubernetes if they're going the package route, right? So as long as we're meeting them or keeping them in mind as we are changing documentation and process, then we should be fine.
So concretely, I agree with that. But concretely speaking of spec files, I think we have a little bit more freedom in terms of what we can change, because as long as you don't change stuff like package names and so on, and you don't change what you deliver by those packages, users are not going to much care if this is going to be 1 spec file, 10 spec files, or whatsoever. So we should try to make it as backwards compatible as possible, but we have some options to change that without affecting users, which is a good thing.
What I would say here is, as much as possible, like, we are moving to new systems gives us an opportunity to be clear about the fact that we are moving to new systems and break things when necessary. I think the ideal outcome is that there is no breakage, but if we're being truly honest, dev and RPM, building, publishing has been broken in Kubernetes for too long. So I think backwards compatibility is maybe a nice goal. We should not sacrifice the opportunity to improve the system overall by trying to attain backwards compatibility.
Yeah, I agree.
So don't feel hampered by certain things, by the way that we're doing certain things right now, because we are going to have to sit down as we get closer to shipping this and say, does this work? That, you know, does the system work as expected? And like, that is a huge opportunity to have a net improvement for folks.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, so I think this is pretty good feedback. Thank you all for that. I think that, yeah, as a next step, as I said, I will look at the multi-arc stuff. I will see about meeting with OBS folks so that we can go through stuff that we did once again and make sure that they're fine with that, they agree with what we did, and to see if there may be some better way or if we missed something. And yeah, I think it is okay for now. I will continue working on this, try to drive this forward. Let's hope that we can make it work. And yeah, I guess one option that we should also do is try to get that cap merged. I think it is in pretty good state, but it would be useful to have it documented.
Yeah, we basically need approval for this cap. So Jeremy, Adolfo, if you would have a minute to read out this cap and give it an approval, then we can move forward with it.
Sure.
Thanks. One more question, or one last question, Marco. The main goal is to move the DApp and RPM package building to community infra. So we don't have really defined what community infra means. I would assume that it mostly means that every release manager is able to debug in case something fails, or that the logs are visible to everyone. Do you see anything which really does not fulfill the community infra aspect of that effort?
So my opinion on this, I mean, it is not going to be truly community infra because this is running on officers and stuff. And but I think this is okay because, as you said, logs are public and anyone can go ahead and see logs and what failed. And besides that, you actually have a way to run packages locally, and this is super useful when testing stuff. Like, you have it with their own CLI tool, you can run it locally, and it's going to print you error. You can use like change root stuff to actually go into that environment and see what's going on. It's pretty useful. So, and we can give release managers access to the environment and ability to push packages. It also solves the problem with GPG keys because GPG keys are hidden from us. So even if you give access to someone, they can just access the public key, so no private key, and we don't have to deal with key management. And even if we would want to go with community infra, like fully, OBS platform is open source. There are images that you can run on your own. This is not the ideal way of doing things because there is that maintenance and other stuff, but it is possible. It is not like that we are locked with Google's infra that we have to switch to something completely else and such stuff. So yeah, I think that it should satisfy our needs for now.
Cool. Thank you. Anything else regarding the Dev and RPM packaging topic? Or any other topic in general, because we are now at the end of the agenda.
Maybe one thing that we can ask for OBS topic is, how are we going to proceed in terms of using it? Like, I guess we can set up it, create packages and so on. And then what are going to be our next steps? Like, are we going to announce these, to declare some alpha state, to ask folks to try it? How do we want to go with that?
So after the CAP has been merged, so we are kind of outlined the next steps in the issue link to the CAP together with Rory. And I think if we decide that we move forward with OBS, and then we should, in an alpha state, do the implementation and build something which kind of replicates the current state, but we build it on community infra. So that would be the alpha, without having the actual transition done, right? So we just have the system up and running in parallel.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
And as Stephen already mentioned, I mean, we can decide that we want to integrate it into Krell, and then we build something like an OSC is the tool, right? OSC wrapper, like in the same way as we do it with GCP, for example. We don't have to use or build an API.
Okay, sounds good to me. Yeah, from that topic, that's it from my side. If you have any questions, you can also send me a message or Slack or something like that, or we have a dedicated channel for this, so feel free to join us.
Yeah, and maybe if you think it would make sense to have another meetup with the OBS folks, then just feel free to reach out and we can set up the appointment and make it public.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, any last topics for this meeting? Otherwise, I will give you 5 minutes back. Enjoy the rest of the day. Hopefully see you at KubeCon next week. We tried our best to do something like a recording or live streaming, but we can't promise. See you there. Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.